Greetings and welcome to the Mount Rushmore podcast. Hey, let's jump right into this thing. It is the Mount Rushmore of voting for something not political. And this was a suggestion from who?
That was me, Michael. Hi, howdy.
Why'd you suggest it? Why did you vote for this topic?
It was less of a vote and more of I told you guys what was happening. Which, if things go poorly, tomorrow as we record this, then there will be one person telling everybody how to do everything, and it's going to be awful. I wanted to do a kind of election voting episode. I think because the election was coming up, to be a little bit topical, but also we recorded this sort of episode 4 years ago before the 2016 election, and I've just had this stain on my head of just this, and we all have for the last 4 years of just like, I can't believe it. I just can't believe it. So I wanted to talk about voting, but not about anything really serious.
Okay.
Because I can't bear to be too serious right now.
You know what? It strikes me that voting is like when I was filling out the ballot, it's like going to a sushi restaurant. Like they hand you this order form, and they say, "What do you want?" And you start to like circle the things that you want. But it just occurred to me like 4 years ago when I went to this place, I got food poisoning and nearly died. And it's been a miserable 4 years. Like the implication when you're voting for something that you're going to get it is completely nefarious. But Michael chose the topic. Richard, you start us out.
And my apologies to the listeners for the fact that I sound like I'm in some sort of missile silo from the 1960s. Just moved to a new place, haven't got everything set up here, so I'm in a little bit of a sardine can. So just bear with me on that. No, my first choice is the TV show Survivor.
Oh.
And the voting ceremony when someone is voted off of the island.
Mm-hmm. Great choice, Rich.
Now, I wasn't aware that the show was still on the air because I stopped, like most sane people, I stopped watching this about 30 seasons ago. But I did watch the first, 4 or 5 seasons pretty religiously. I remember even participating in Survivor pick'em pools where you would try and each week you would decide you'd have to choose who would get voted off the island, and it was like a fantasy football type thing.
Yeah.
So I used to watch this pretty regularly, and without a doubt, the most entertaining part of the show was the voting ceremony.
Yeah.
And trying to discover which dope thought that he had played the game perfectly and had all the votes go into their favor, only to sit there and just be flabbergasted when they've been voted off. It was schadenfreude on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
And it was, your demise was delivered to you on like if the prom committee did the Gilligan's Island set, like it was like the jankiest with coconuts and torches and like
it looked like your dream backyard a little.
Yeah. Totally tiki nightmare.
Yeah, so it didn't exactly have the gravitas of what they would play it up to be with this big emotional music and everyone getting very upset if they've gotten voted off and yelling and screaming and all this sort of stuff. And meanwhile, like you said, they're basically at Trader Vic's.
I always enjoyed, I think later on when they kind of introduced like the immunity idols or like a necklace or something, that they'd bring out basically like this palm frond coconut teddy bear that they just kind of hold, and it's like, can't kick me off. It's just so ridiculous to see these grown adults holding this thing that is gonna make it impossible for them to be kicked out of this quote unquote reality.
Was Mark
I think
Burnett
Trump.
watching his kids play in the yard, and this kid came up with like no tag backs or something,
Right.
and you go, I need to put that in the show. What were
I'm
you saying about
concerned that
Trump?
Trump. Yeah, I'm
Yeah.
concerned as we record this the day before the election that he's going to feel like he has some sort of immunity idol that he has earned for the last 4 years. It's like, no, can't vote me out. I got this. I got
Yeah.
this shrunken head that I bought in Polynesia or something.
Yeah, talk about a guy living in an augmented reality.
Oh well. And somebody who has so many places to go, actually, with this name on them. Just go to those places. Okay, Richard came out with a fun topic, Survivor. And we're going to find out who's the survivor of this episode of the Mount Rushmore podcast when I do the judging later on, because the other person's going to be voted off the podcast. Who knows? It could be one of these guys. It could be me. Yep, that's right. We gotta.
Could we vote a listener off?
We got to streamline.
I mean, I know there's only 12 of them.
The one, yeah.
We've done that gradually over the last 3 years.
Brian
Winfield
Love of
Brian
Nashville,
Love.
Tennessee.
Oh, man. That's the one I like.
That's the one guy I like. Winfield.
Okay, my first choice is the vote to name the Natural Environment Research Council ship Bodie McBoatface.
Oh, wow. Okay.
In 2016, there was a poll in England about the naming of this new kind of research vessel, this oceanographic research vessel, and they're trying to figure out what they wanted to name it. So they started this poll and made it available to people in England, and a radio host, this guy by the name of James Hand, jokingly suggested the name of Bodie McBoatface, and of course instantly that caught on, and it became the number one voted upon name. I guess it was based on a naming of an owl from a 2012 Adopt a Bird program, and that was Hootie McOwlface.
Oh.
So it has a deep history, a naming tradition. But I ultimately, even though the votes were cast and I'm looking at what the vote came out as, it was a little over 33% for Bodie McBoatface and just under 11% for the Poppy May. It was ultimately named the RRS David Attenborough, which is just so disappointing. I mean, he's great. He's, he's an amazing figure in history and in science and in everything. But like, come on, let the people have this one.
Yeah.
Come on, England, just for once.
Right.
Don't let him make the choice if you're going to take it away. It's going to make people not want to participate in those future things. Yeah.
There have been other ones, like ridiculous things that have been named. Parseface, which was the name of some parser, Trainee McTrainface. It's once you start down that path. But I just love the idea of something being named so silly. And I ultimately there was like a little like research dinghy on the ship. It was like it was like an underwater vehicle, like a little mini submarine that was christened the Bodie McBoatface. So it kind of got in on that ship, but it just doesn't feel.
I love anytime the mass populace gets together to do something ironic and weird, because normally I feel like when we all get together, we do dumb stuff, or you're kind of the middle of the road, or that's why vanilla is so popular. That's what happens when we all get together, it seems. So when it gets weird, I love it.
So my second choice is voting for the Major League Baseball All-Star Game.
Oh, you know what? Okay, go ahead. Mine's slightly different. Mine's slightly different, but I'll move that to my next one. But go ahead. Sorry.
Okay. No, this was something that it used to be more romantic when you didn't get to do it online. I remember growing up as a kid, you actually had to go to the stadium and you would get a paper ballot and you would fill in your little circles, almost like a Scantron, for all the different players you wanted to see in the All-Star game that year. And you would drop it off. They'd have little ballot boxes there for you, and you'd drop it off, and they would collect them and count them, and that's how they would decide who got to play the All-Star game that year. And I didn't get to go to major league parks, but they had them at the minor league parks. So at the Fresno Giants games, I had the opportunity every year to stuff that ballot box for my favorite players. And it was just, I remember growing up as a kid, and I was a kid who loved baseball stats. So I knew all the stats of all the players. So I wouldn't just vote for my favorite player. I would sit there and give it like deep consideration. Okay, who's having the best season this year? Who deserves to be in here? Is he on the Indians? Sure, I'll vote for him anyway.
Yeah.
And it was just such a romantic thing to actually get a paper ballot and vote. It felt very tied into the kind of nostalgia that baseball kind of thrives off of.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that you can now go online and people can vote for like 10 times a day, and there's ways people can, game the system so that they can vote hundreds of times for their favorite player who probably doesn't deserve to get in, but they play for their team. Just the whole system seems kind of, even though it's probably more advanced at this point, it doesn't feel like a better system.
I think there's definitely a lack of romance when you can vote 10 times or 25 times per email for your favorite players and resubmit the ballot without having to fill it out again. Although they do make it a slightly difficult because you have to like enter a like a CAPTCHA code or something like that. There's something that makes it slightly harder than just clicking like refresh or submit. But it's true. It's like I remember sitting there a few years ago doing it, and I remember trying to vote. This is how awful it was. Trying to vote for the worst players for the American League team that I could think of to game the system the other way so that the Dodgers in the National League could have a better team. It was like, God, who's batting 192? That's like a second baseman. Let's see if I can find him. The Orioles, not doing so good. And like the vindictive nature of it, really, as an All-Star game, you should want the best of both sides to play because it would be the best possible game, regardless of the outcome, because it ultimately doesn't matter. But it does feel lacking. It feels
if it were
not
any other,
special.
If it were the NHL or the NBA, would you have the same reverence? I mean, baseball is this museum for a lot of people. So
yeah, it is this. Like I said, it is based on nostalgia.
Yeah.
In so many ways, and it's like I said, the physical act of getting this printed ballot sponsored by Cracker Jacks or whoever sponsored the All-Star Game ballot. It was quaint. It was something. Something that you wouldn't see in other sports, and I don't know if they still have that. I don't think I've seen the paper ballots at ballparks over the last few years. Mm-hmm. And Michael, do you remember us on the Ninjas when we played in Leaders Cup? There was a poll about who was going to win the tournament, and we figured out how you could just resubmit over and over again. I must have done it 500 times a day for like a week. Just sitting there at work for like 2 hours, just refresh.
Yeah, I did the same, and I remember somebody on the East Coast was mad. There's like no way could they be voted, and like I believe somebody else tried to reverse it all. But yeah,
it was good times. It was good. Good work on our part to try and game the system, because that's what we did.
Yeah.
Okay. Winfield, I heard you kind of repositioning something maybe to be in alignment with that. What is it?
Well, I'm just going to move up one of my later choices up to the second pick. And it's whoever the baseball writers of America that vote for like the Baseball Hall of Fame. And what a joke of a process that is, and especially how much of a joke it is these people that refuse to someone that is so worthy of being in the quote unquote Hall of Fame and will refuse to like give them like the 100% vote because
Yes.
Babe Ruth didn't happen to get it. And this is all mostly a wash because last year Mariano Rivera of the Yankees was the first person ever to receive 100% of the votes, but it took from 1936 until 2019, and all these people that are just like these old, like this is the other side of like the voting for the All-Star that feels quaint. This is like this stodgy old baseball writer stick in the mudness of it, where like just because Babe Ruth didn't get 100%, nobody else can. And you look at the names of these like amazing players and great players throughout history, and then you get to like Ken Griffey Jr., who is like 99.7%, and it was just probably one person who just knew that everybody else was going to vote for the kid, and then wouldn't do it out of some nonsensical principle. And a lot of this stuff is so tied into, I didn't want to talk about politics, but I just imagine those people that are like doing this kind of voting, like the voting for, writing in Kanye West or writing in Mickey Mouse. I mean, how many times does Mickey Mouse get a goddamn vote in any presidential election? But just whatever that thing is where you're trying to be a dick about something that's important, especially important to some of these people,
Yeah. No, I like this pick. Yeah, the baseball traditionalist who has taken it now too far, and like you said, is refusing to vote for the greatest player of their generation because Ty Cobb, by God, didn't get in unanimously, so why should he? And it's just such flawed. Well, how about the fact that Ty Cobb didn't play against any black players? That might be the
Yeah.
reason why he didn't get on.
So the other thing that I kind of just dislike about the whole baseball Hall of Fame voting thing, and maybe it's not just baseball and maybe it's with football as well, is how like there becomes a period where they just stop allowing you to vote for a person. Like they've aged out or they've had too many tries, and like baseball, the Hall of Fame committee just gives up. I just can't imagine being like a player that is potentially gonna make it, but then they're just like, nah, nobody likes you enough. No one wants to do it. I mean, how to be constantly disappointed year after year must be so heartbreaking after like a career and a passion that you've devoted your entire life to. I think that's just a shame.
Is that because there was always somebody more stellar that year that they were up against? Is that why that happens?
I think so.
Yeah,
I mean,
or it
usually
could
it's like guys from like, like that had a pretty good baseball career from like 1972 to 1986, and they were good enough to play for 14 years, but they were never like the best player at any given time. And then you get to a point where like you're eligible 5 years later, but nobody really wanted to vote for you. But you're kind of hoping that enough people's minds will have changed. Does that feel about right, Richard?
You're hoping that you can make it in the Hall of the Pretty Good,
Yeah.
and that somehow enough people will sort of allow you to sneak through. There's always the occasional Harold Baines or somebody like that who kind of gets in on some sort of, that almost feels like a technicality. It's not quite, but it kind of feels like that.
All right, homies, let's go to our halftime and remind people that they can vote for the Mount Rushmore podcast. It's as simple as this. You go to wherever you find our podcasts, and there's always something like a stars or like a thumbs ups or like a 1 through 5. Give us all 5. Vote for us by giving us all 5 of those indicators, and we would also like you to vote for us by downloading past episodes. That would be super solid. And you can cast a vote for your favorite future topic of the Mount Rushmore podcast by going to Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and following, liking, and suggesting a future topic. Past suggestors have had the dubious honor of joining us in debate here on the show. So that's something you could do. And then, of course, wait 4 years to vote for the next thing that happens to our country.
A chicken in every pot.
Yeah.
Tippecanoe and Tyler too.
Boy, these are some old school. These are like some Rushmore, really vintage campaign slogans here.
Bully. Is that one?
Bully? Yeah, that's like a Roosevelt. That seems like a Roosevelt. Richard, what is your third choice?
Yeah, so my third choice, and Michael, you want to talk about bullshit voting systems.
Yeah, ready for it.
Let's talk about the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. This thing is garbage. I think I've ranted about this before on the podcast, but I will briefly. It's basically
the Rock and Jock Hall of Fame. That's not
that
legit?
would be incredible. Dan Cortez, 100% vote. No, the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is basically when it comes down to who votes for the people who get in from the pool of nominees, it's like this group of 500 rock critics, different musicians, rock and roll luminaries, so to speak. But in terms of who decides who gets nominated, who is eligible to be voted on, it's this like weird committee that's basically made up of John Winter, who is the publisher of Rolling Stone magazine, and like his cronies. And so they basically get to control who gets nominated for possible voting. And, they also have a business to run. The Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is a business. They have to sell tickets to get people into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction ceremonies and the concert and all the other stuff that goes on along with it. And so that's always been one of the problems with the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame is that worthy acts aren't even getting nominated because either Jan Winter doesn't personally doesn't like them, or in a lot of ways there are these bloated 70s classic rock bands who, if they get in, they'll sell more tickets than the Smiths would. So who do you think is going to get nominated? The whole system's just messed up. I mean, you can just see it by who is not in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame and some of the acts that are in that probably you kind of scratch your head about. The whole system is bloated and excessive. So I guess in its own way, it kind of mirrors rock and roll pretty effectively. But it's a mess. It's just a mess.
That's interesting you said that, because I was about to steer the conversation towards the ethos of rock being rebellion, but your evaluation is that the music industry and everything's become more industry than inspiration anyhow. So it mirrors the bloated nature of the actual industry.
Yeah, I think that if you look at what the criteria is for an act to make it into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, I think a lot of it at this point is cronyism.
Yeah.
And that's unfortunate, because if it was a true Rock and Roll Hall of Fame that was there to represent the apex of rock and roll, the achievement of rock and roll, you would have a lot different mix of artists that wouldn't just be bands that had 10 different top 10 albums.
Do you think there would be fewer? Would there be fewer influential artists? Because I think of the Irma Thomases and Aretha Franklins, and there's so many people in there who a young person today might not even recognize as a rock, or even somebody who listened to album-oriented rock from the 80s or whatever might not even recognize as a rock person.
You've got those. I guess I can't remember exactly what the phrase is they use, but the early influences
Mm-hmm.
that kind of get voted in on occasion. Like I know a few years ago they en masse inducted like the Crickets and a bunch of
Yeah.
these other supporting groups who didn't get in. Like when Buddy Holly was inducted, there wasn't Buddy Holly and the Crickets who were inducted. It was just Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
And they tried to go back and retroactively kind of shoehorn the Crickets and all these other sort of backing bands. I think the Jordanaires was another one maybe.
Oh.
Um, in as these pioneering rock bands. I think maybe the Comets was another one because I think Bill
Mm-hmm.
Haley was inducted, but not Bill Haley and the Comets.
Yeah.
So there is an element of that, but I think where it's lacking is, look, the Pixies aren't in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. That's ridiculous. In terms of you said bands that are influential or artists who are influential. I don't know there are many more influential artists to music that's happening today than a band like the Pixies.
Mm-hmm.
Hugely influential. But for whatever reason, the nominating committee doesn't see fit to make them eligible to be voted on by the 500 plus person overall
Yeah.
voting block. And it's just very frustrating for someone like me who has a deep love of rock and roll history. To see it kind of get just shit on is just really frustrating.
Well, it could be also just that the Pixies suck, Richard. So.
Oh, that's also true. I
You
forgot
ever think
about
of that?
Yeah.
Did you think about that one? Yeah.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
Okay, good.
The third choice for Michael Winfield.
My third choice is the vote by a legion of fans of comic books to kill the Jason Todd Robin character in an issue of Batman. So back in 1988, in an issue of Batman, they had this four-part storyline called A Death in the Family. And by that time, for the past 5 or 6 years, the Robin that everyone had kind of grown to know, who is what's Robin's name? Not
Dick Grayson?
Thank you. Dick Grayson had kind of moved on to become a different character called Nightwing, and he was replaced with a new character named Jason Todd, who is a kid that became kind of Bruce Wayne's ward and became the new Robin. Well, people didn't like him very much. I don't really know why, but they decided, you know what, we're going to leave it up to the fans to decide his fate. So they had this storyline called A Death in the Family, where at the end, the Joker beats him to death with a crowbar and then blows him up with a bomb. And then you had to like have people and then people called in to one of two numbers. Does he live or does he die? And then the next issue, they kind of revealed whether he lived or he died. And it was apparently a pretty close vote. I guess him dying was a 72 vote margin versus him living.
Oh, wow.
And there she goes. I mean, I guess that's the true sense of like apathy towards a character, whether it's so 50-50 split that they're like, he lives or dies, it's fine. He's just a Robin. Of course, like all good kind of superhero characters, he's later brought back in later storylines, like 20 years later. But just the idea that you'd put this power in the hands of like kids and probably some other grown adults to just like kill off your character, and for it to be so brutal too, was I think really striking. And they say that Batman kind of was one of those characters or one of those comics that really in like kind of the mid 80s to late 80s kind of turned into this more gritty version of Batman with like the Dark Knight Returns storyline and a comic called The Killing Joke. But this one in particular is just as grim. Just the idea that like we'll see if he's going to live or die based on people calling into a 1-900 number is just wild to me.
So they had to get charged for their vote because this was the late 80s, early 90s. Not only did you had to pay for the privilege of killing off a beloved,
right,
quote unquote,
right,
beloved
exactly,
character.
Yeah,
Fun, good times. I wonder why the comic books went into such decline for a time there. Wonder why that happened.
I'd never written a letter to the editor, but I'd sure seen them in every comic ever picked up. So it seemed like the audience had their chance to vote via letters and whatnot, like to express their disfavor or about a character. I wonder if they were already getting those. I wonder if they planned on, we're going to kill this idiot anyway. Let's make people feel like they're actually voting for her. Let's make a stunt out of it somehow. But even just the idea of that, it almost feels like, no, bad guys are the ones who kill superheroes, not the readers of the comic book. don't give. And then also, I think like I don't know how many times, even as a kid, like if given the choice of like destroying something awesome or not, I would always want to break it anyway. So it's appealing to the worst nature.
Sure. Because you're an asshole. Kids are assholes.
Kids are
basically.
assholes. I gotta say.
That's
That's my biggest thing about this election coming up. Well, in past, I think we don't as much need a new leader as we need new Americans.
Too many Americans right now are voting to kill beloved cartoon character Robin.
Yeah, that's it. The sidekick. He was the sidekick. He was
or
the
democracy
sidekick to Batman.
Or democracy.
Yeah.
I mean, it wasn't, Robin has kind of been one of those. Robin has been kind of one of those characters too that over the years he's kind of become this kind of revolving door of people kind of filling his role after Jason Todd. They are like, okay, let's get Tim Drake in there and let's get I forget there's a female Robin for a time. Let's get her in there, and then let's get Bruce Wayne's son, Damian Wayne, in there. Just like it's wild to think that it started with like them basically like, we gotta kill him. I do like that the first Robin grew up and out of that costume and into something else, but what a rough way to go.
Yeah, I just feel like being the Spinal Tap drummer or something. Richard's fourth and final vote.
All right, so my final vote is when Andy Kaufman was voted off of Saturday Night Live in 1980.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So a couple of things were happening here leading up to this. One is they had done a running skit in 1983 with Larry the Lobster for this episode, where people could call in and decide the fate of Larry the Lobster, whether or not he would be eaten and boiled alive or whether he would get to live. And they would have Eddie Murphy there, and they would do these sort of almost like a biography of Larry the Lobster, where he grew up, his home life, his wife and his kids, and we kind of went through the whole thing. And at the end, they wound up saving Larry the Lobster. Kind of while this was going on, Andy Kaufman had been doing his intergender wrestling championship of the world stuff, which was really controversial, and a lot of people really didn't like it. And he did it once on SNL, and they got a lot of negative feedback for it. So Dick Ebersol, the producer, decided, well, let's do this thing that was kind of entertaining and we had success with a few weeks ago. But instead of Larry the Lobster, let's put Andy Kaufman's career on SNL on the line. And basically the vote was, should Andy Kaufman be banned from Saturday Night Live?
Yeah.
And this was pretty much the theme of the whole episode. You had Mary Gross, one of the cast members, as they're reading the number for yes, he should be banned. She just read off real quickly so you can understand what she's saying. So that no one can understand what the numbers were. You had Eddie Murphy basically saying, look, I'm a friend of Andy Kaufman, so don't make me go out there and start punching people in America if you vote the wrong way. But again, I don't know if people thought this was a bit or if they thought they wanted to try and destroy something that was beautiful, to quote Fight Club. But in the end, Andy Kaufman, the Yes banned him from SNL, wound up winning by a few thousand votes. And he was never on Saturday Night Live again. It was about a year before he died, and they never brought him back. They did run a commercial from him where he had quote unquote bought airtime to thank the people who had voted for him. But this was a point of controversy in his career. I believe in Man in the Moon, there's like this big screening match between Dick Ebersol, the producer, and Andy Kaufman, because Andy Kaufman felt like he'd been set up. And of course, with everything Kaufman, who knows how much of that was stagecraft and how much of it was real. But the reality was they stuck to the ban, and he was never invited back on the show.
Mm-hmm. Wow, that's a guy who kind of mastered the mind fuck, and I would say for the number of I've dabbled in comedy for a while, and the guys who are meta, many times the guys who are meta aren't good performers to begin with. They decided to get weird rather than to get good and to be funny. And Kaufman was phenomenally talented and polished and entertaining. I think he was almost like Picasso, a guy who could like paint like one of the masters at age 15 and then spent the rest of his career trying to act like a maniac or do something to deconstruct the form of comedy. So it almost seems like he was looking to be booed off the biggest stage there was, and SNL was the biggest comedy stage there was. So it almost seemed to me like the height of that.
Yeah,
his version of performance art.
It was the place where it was like his little playground where he could kind of do whatever weird stuff he wanted to, and they would welcome him. And it was almost like, how do I turn that around?
Yeah.
And it kind of backfired on him in this case.
Have you seen Kaufman? Kaufman was on like the Johnny Cash holiday special. Like Kaufman did so much variety television. He was so embraced by Middle America on Taxi. Like he was a commodity, a comedy commodity, and just must have not have been comfortable with that because he had to.
Oh, I can't imagine. Yeah, as you said, I think he just wanted to break it over and over again.
Okay, Winfield.
This one is something that hit home for me. It was in 1986, the Masters of the Universe had decided to create a character contest where you could submit a design for a character to the toy manufacturer, and the winner would be chosen by a vote and have the toy produced. And as a very into He-Man 7-year-old at the time, this was my jam. I remember, so it had two parts. It had the submitting a character, and it was, kids age 5 to 8 or 5 to 10, however old you were. You submit your character, you draw the picture, you send it in, you give them the name and whatever powers it has and what it looks like, and then the powers that be over it, Mattel would take those submissions, weed out the ones, and then would have the general populace vote on the ones that would have a character made and have a character go in their comic. And you'd also get like something that was like $50,000 or $100,000 scholarship and a trip to Disneyland. Like, it was big stuff, right? Big. And so me and my grandma, we sat down and we drew this guy that had like this big octopus head or squid head. I don't remember what his name was or what his powers were. Probably squid powers or octopus powers, And of course, mine wasn't one of the 5 that were chosen to be voted.
Are you serious?
But no, was not.
Oh yeah. Oh.
No. But the 5 that were was one person that looks like a big eyeball. One person has like a big brain. One person is literally like a net with lips and hair named Netta. And the ultimate winner was this guy named the Fearless Photog, who was like a guy that had like this crappy camera for a head. His power was to take a picture of whatever. Well, needless to say, I remember looking at this list of characters and being like, seeing He-Man scream, "Vote now!" It's like, not for these assholes.
Not for these idiots.
I'm
Not.
you know, I'm 7, 8 years old. And I'm like, these are terrible. Where's my octopus creature that should have won?
Yeah.
But ultimately, one guy did win. This guy, Nathan Bittner, and his fearless photog won. Unfortunately, he never got the character made into a toy.
Oh no.
Which that feels. I mean, I think he got the money as like a scholarship and everything. But can you imagine how heartbreaking it would be to be a kid that would win this contest, to have your design, that you could have your toy battle He-Man or Skeletor or whoever, and it just never materializes.
Mm-hmm.
God, that's democracy.
He should have chosen easy to injection mold man. That guy would have gotten made for sure.
He looks exactly like He-Man, but he's just
brown hair,
solid.
Yeah.
Regular He-Man leg for a head man. Spits left over.
It also just kind of reminds me of like the promises of voting, and everyone, all these politicians that are out there that are telling you that everything's going to be fixed. I've got a plan for everything. Not that I don't believe Joe Biden. Not that I don't believe Joe Biden wouldn't do all the things that he promises or whatever. But like, you're going to get half or a quarter or some portion of whatever that is, and you just have to be okay with it.
Yeah. As
a 7 or 8 year old, I couldn't imagine being like, I can't believe I won this contest. Like, yeah, by the way, you're not getting this toy. This toy is never being made. It's not going to appear in any of the comic books or the comic strips. So good luck with that. It'll be a character that you'll see in like He-Man magazine, Masters of the Universe magazine, and then there you go. Enjoy.
Fun choices, you guys. Now, sadly, I have to be the one that dashes some of your hopes. Why don't we choose? I know it's really dear to your heart, Richard. So Major League Baseball All-Star Game, All-Star Team choices, because you had the kind of fun backstory about going to the park and taking it seriously and being invested in it, and it had a Ken Burns kind of vibe floating around there. And Batman fan playing to my my things I like there with Jason Todd, Robin killed. I also like when teenagers and idiots just vote to just murder somebody. And then gonna go with Andy Kaufman because that was kind of compelling, and Michael's very personal Motu creative character competition. So there we go. So it's a tie.
I believe that, Michael, you won by a point this week.
I did. The Electoral College turned out in my favor because I had more votes. I think Richard, you might have won the popular vote, but I think I got the Electoral.
We'll let the audience decide about that. But
yeah,
I have a concession speech ready to go, guys.
Oh, sweet.
Fuck you all. That's my concession speech.
Let's record an ending of this podcast as if Joe Biden won, just for the fun of it.
Okay.
Hey, isn't it awesome that we've got this new day in America and we can all be very optimistic? Biden isn't perfect, but I don't think he's actively, nefariously trying to destroy the democracy like Trump, right?
Right. He's not trying to eat poor people's livers.
Yeah.
Like I think Trump would do if he had 4 more years.
Yeah. Agreed.
As long as they were like overcooked and doused in ketchup as well.
Yeah.
Flash fried. Absolutely.
Isn't it awesome that Mitch McConnell, the necrotization of his body, the bruises and the leprosy that was creeping around on his face finally impacted his brain and he died. Isn't that great? I
That's
can't really
cool.
understand all this shit.
Yeah, Michael will get this, but he
That's
should
good.
not. He should not have put that Horcrux on. That's what happens.
That's
Harry
true.
Potter.
Very true.
That's a Harry Potter.
That's
Okay.
That's a Harry Potter. No,
All
it's
right.
it's great. It's great that I can scrub my Twitter feed of everything but like fun stuff now. I'm so excited to just tear away the walls of, or just the list of people that I follow for, doom scrolling reasons.
Right.
Yay.
This has been the Mount Rushmore of things you vote for that aren't politics. I, as always, am Richard.
I'm Michael.
Hi, Michael.